I am very pleased to be speaking to Andy Penkow, who has a new single. It's about to come out at the time we're doing this interview. The single is 1993. Andy, welcome. Thanks for talking to me.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. Nice to see you.
It's my pleasure. So as I said, the new single is called 1993. Why? Take us through it. What's the story?
Yeah, I know. I'm getting asked this question a lot. It's one of those things. The number is quite significant to me, I guess, because that was the year that I started high school, and I turned 13. But the song's actually about. So where I grew up, there was this old willow tree in my parents' backyard, and we used to go and play around this willow tree all the time. It was kind of like our go-to place, and we'd pretend that we were rock stars or doctors or God knows what we used to do. But that's where the idea of the song came from. Yeah.
Right. And so I believe you co-wrote it with Alan Caswell, who of course writes songs with a lot of different artists. How did you come to have that association with him?
Yeah, so Alan Caswell, I was just really lucky. I've known Alan for a while, but I was lucky enough for him to come and spend some time with me. And I had the song already written. I wrote the song, and I just kind of shelved it for a little bit because I thought, I don't know if it's quite there. And had Alan come over, and we just sat down, and probably within an hour, he kind of waved his magic wand, as he does, Mr. Caswell, and really happy with the outcome. I've got an upcoming album coming out this year, and we wrote 2 tracks on the album together.
So when you say the song wasn't quite there, I'm always interested to know about songwriting process. So is that like an instinctual feeling where you just think something's not right? Because you've written a few songs by now, you've released an album, you've released an EP, so you know what you're doing. And so do you tend to follow your instinct when it comes to that writing process, or is like technically you just think there's something I can't quite get there?
Yeah, it's for me, it's an interesting process because there's no one way that I write. Like, it's so different every time. But for this particular project, this album, I had an idea for the title track of the album, which is called Love, Lies and Dirty Dishes. And I was in the car one day and it just came to me, and I just thought, that's a really great name for an album title. So I wrote the title track around that name, and then I thought, let's write a piece, like put everything together under that name. So that's what I wanted to do with this track. But particularly, I guess for me, it was more about just being really honest with this song, and pairing it back. And I didn't think I really had that to start with. And sitting down with Alan, he's just got such a brilliant mind. He's got things that I would never have thought of to change or to put into the song. So it was definitely really beneficial to have Alan's input on the song.
So you mentioned getting the title song idea while you were in the car, and I've heard that from quite a few people actually, that the car is a great place for ideas, but of course it's not a convenient place for noting down those ideas. So what do you do if you get an idea in the car?
Yeah, it's a funny thing. It's a funny question, actually. If I do get an idea in the car, I usually use the old Google or Siri, and just tell them to add notes as I'm driving, so I don't forget it. But there's been times where I've had to pull over and write down stuff. So it is a funny place.
Yeah, I was going to say, that's a good idea to say, hey, Siri, take a note.
Yeah, exactly. Take a note, and that's kind of how I do it, so I don't forget anything. And then I'll get home and really delve into it a bit more if I'm in the mood. But as a songwriter, inspiration just strikes at the weirdest time. You don't know when it's going to happen. That's the thing.
Yeah, and every time you have an idea, is it something that you do pursue, or do you tend to collect ideas and just think, I'll see what's still knocking on my brain a little bit later?
Yeah, definitely. I've got a whole back catalogue of ideas that I've got in my head. I've probably got enough material for another 5 albums, to be honest with you. But I think you kind of you nut through them, and the way that I look at it is I like to get other people listening to what I've done and getting some input on it, because at the end of the day, it's not just about pleasing yourself, it's about pleasing the fan base and pleasing people that are listening to the music. So that's the hardest part, because you can write a song that's really personal to you and you think it's fantastic, but nobody can relate to because it's too personal. So you got to kind of find the balance, don't you?
Yeah, it's always that tricky thing of yes, well, it's not tricky. Being specific is also being universal in a lot of ways. But yes, the level of specificity is a balance, because I suppose also when you're writing songs, you don't want to give away too much of yourself, because then you could feel really exposed. And then every time you got to perform that song, you're thinking, I'm ripping my heart open here every single time. I don't know if I want to do it.
So true. But I think some of the best songs ever written are those ones that are just so honest. And, I think like I said, it's hard to find the balance, but hopefully I've done it with this album. I think, I don't want to toot my own horn, but I think I've done it. And I think it's some of my best work so far. So I'm really excited about it.
And of course, the thing, as you said, you mentioned fans, and once you've had music out, of course, there are people waiting, and that's a different experience, I imagine. That when you're putting out your first songs, it's like, great, they're going out into the ether. Who knows if anyone's there? But then this far down, it's like, well, people are listening because you've been nominated for and won awards for your songwriting. Like you've charted with these songs, so there are people out there. Does it feel like a responsibility, or is it a good responsibility?
Yeah, it's very scary to think, the first couple of songs you release are probably like the easiest, but the more you do, the more pressure you feel to do better and write better. That's how I kind of look at things. But yeah, I get really nervous before I'm releasing stuff for sure. But as I've got older and the more that I've released, I've learned to kind of just let it go and let it do its thing. And, not every song you release is going to be a hit, and not everyone's going to like it. But I think if you're true to who you are, and you're true to what you're trying to achieve as an artist, I think that's the main thing. And that's what I've learned as I've kind of progressed in my career, is really think about the art and why I started in the first place.
Yeah. As you said, you can't please everyone, but the great Becky Cole once said on stage, she said, you can't please all of the people all the time, but I will die trying. So.
Exactly. And she's an honest woman. I think she's right too. I think, we all kind of crave that level of acceptance, and we all want our songs to do really well, like having said that. But I think, for me, I just really wanted to write something. And Shane Nicholson, who I've worked with in the past, actually said to me, do you want to write a song that lasts a lifetime, or do you want to write a one-hit wonder? So I kind of look at it like, I want to write material that will last and hopefully, keep going. And people, 30, 40 years down the track will go, oh yeah, I remember that song, or I relate to that song. So that's what I'm trying to do.
But I suppose, both are valid. It's okay to write a one-hit wonder.
But exactly, you know what? Some of them have made lots of money out of it, so I don't think they're complaining. That's for sure. And I think for me, I'd love to have a one-hit wonder, but I think I just really want to create. I want to be able to have a platform, and I really want to be able to keep doing what I'm doing. So,
yeah. So as you said, the art is important to you. When did that start? So when did you begin songwriting, or did singing and playing an instrument come first?
Yeah, so singing and playing an instrument came first. Mm-hmm. Singing was definitely where I started, and I kind of fell into it, to be honest. Like, I was a bit of an awkward child growing up. I didn't really know what I wanted to do, and I did a bit of everything, but I didn't really specifically have one thing that I was great at. Until my music teacher at school said to my mum, "Oh, Andy's got a really great voice, and I think he should sing." And that's where it all started. So I would also her, to be honest. And once I got the bug for it, it was one of those things. I just felt liberated. I felt like it was something that I was quite shy as a kid, so it was really it was an outlet for me to go to kind of stand out in front of everyone and really perform and show them who I was and what I had to offer.
So had you been singing around the house till that point? And obviously your parents probably thought, your mum thought, oh yeah, that's just Andy. But it took a teacher to point out that actually Andy's really good.
Yeah. It's funny because I did used to sing a lot, like at home, and perform around the house and annoy my brother and, sing in the car and do all that kind of stuff. So I did do a lot of it, but I never really thought it was something that I could pursue until that kind of moment. And but I think music's always been around me anyway. My grandmother was an opera singer, professional opera singer, so for her, we kind of grew up around that. And all my cousins are musical. They pretty much all play some kind of instrument. So my brother plays guitar, but it skipped my parents. They've got no musical abilities whatsoever. But yeah,
maybe they were just busy, didn't have time to practice.
True.
So given that opera is in your family line, did you grow up listening to opera and classical music, or did you have other musical influences?
Yeah, well, my mum tried to get me to do opera when I was younger because I had quite a good tone for it back when I was quite young. And but I think, you know, for me, my parents' record collection was really prominent with the music that I listen to now. Lots of Neil Young, lots of Dolly Parton, you know, lots of Americana stuff, the Eagles and Bob Dylan. So that stuff was played a lot around the house. So I remember listening to it and really being drawn to it. And then I'd go to school and all the kids would be listening to, I don't know, New Kids on the Block or whatever was going around in the late 90s. And I wanted to listen to Dolly Parton. So, yeah.
How did that go?
Yeah, not very
Did you reveal, did you reveal to others that you were listening to Dolly Parton?
I think it was kind of, I started writing quite young, and I think, you know, those styles really started to come out in my writing. So, you know, it wasn't something that I was advertising, but it was something that you know, I'm definitely proud of now, because you look at these artists that are iconic songwriters, and you just think, you know, like Dolly, for example, she's one of the world's best songwriters. So, it's kind of a privilege, isn't it, to be able to have that as an influence, I think.
Absolutely. So a couple of things I've picked up just from what you said that I've heard in your music. One of them is about your voice. So you said, you know, your mother was steering you in the direction of opera, and I heard in your voice these really interesting kind of modulations and progressions from note to note, really distinct use of notes, like, or distinctive use of notes. And I was thinking, wonder where that's come from. Well, now I have the answer. You had some really early voice training.
I did, yeah. So that vocals was my first kind of introduction to music, and then I started singing a lot and wanted to be a singer, and pretty much had to learn how to play an instrument a little bit later in life. So, you know, to be a solo artist, you have to be able to kind of play an instrument to write something. But I've had singing training ever since I was 12 years old, so that was where the kind of bread and butter was for me. Yeah, but it's interesting because my tone is so different to anything that's out especially in the country music industry, and I'm trying to kind of not fit into too much of a box, but still be quite authentic to my sound, but still, you know, get played on Australian country radio and overseas as well. So it's a fine line to find, you know, where you sit. But
well, I think because the other thing that I, out of what you were saying, talking about Dolly Parton being an influence, is that I noticed that, you know, on your songs and your album and on your EP, it's clear you are not afraid of emotion as a songwriter. Like you are leading into those strong feelings, which some people might shy away from because it can be quite tough to keep bringing those up when you're performing, for example. But obviously that Dolly example of going hard into emotions, because she does, and she really lays things bare, particularly her early work, a lot of it was really dark. So you obviously don't mind drawing from that deep well, or maybe you find it cathartic.
No, it's definitely my muse for sure. I think I kind of look at my writing like I want to be able to write authentically and not just write for the sake of writing. And that takes a lot of practice to be able to do that, I think. And working with artists like Shane Nicholson and Lynn Botel and Alan Caswell, like those mentors, they're mentors to me. Their style of writing is very similar to that, and I think the more that I've hung around these icons of Australian country music, the more that I've understood why it's really important to write authentic and write about what you know, and put as much feeling as you can into your songs, and hopefully that shows. And I think it does when you perform them too, because you can actually draw on the experience.
Yeah. So I think the way you phrased it was it takes a bit of work to get to that. And I think part of that work is actually training yourself to not get in your own way, like to bat away doubts that inevitably come in when you're revealing something about yourself in a song, because even though you have that protection of being the performer, a lot of people will presume it's your experience. And I would imagine it's sort of a push and pull of, I want to say that much, maybe I don't. And then the work is learning to get through that, learning the parameters of what you can reveal while still protecting a little bit of yourself.
Yeah, for sure. You know, especially being, you know, in the public eye to some degree, you don't want to lay it all on the table.
Yeah.
So you do kind of pull back a little bit. But I'm starting to get a name for myself writing all these kind of sad love songs. So I guess that's one thing that, you know, that I draw on a lot. You know, past relationships that I've drawn on to write songs. But I think as I've become more of a seasoned songwriter, I've learned to draw on different things other than just love. Because, you know, most songs that people write are about love, or
Okay.
heartbroken or something like that. So I think it's a different challenge to write a song about something that, you know, is to make it as authentic as what a love song can be, or a heartbreak song. And that's what I've kind of tried to do with this song 1993. I've tried to make it as authentic to who I am, you know, as a person, you know, and what I kind of went through as a kid growing up and listening to music, and you know, having friends in there that did the same thing, but they've all gone down a different path, and here I am still doing it. So that's what the song kind of ultimately is about.
And also your influences from your life, musically speaking. I mean, so the voice training, the songwriting influence from Dolly Parton and other artists also tells me a bit about how well you use melody, because you have these strong melodic instincts in your songs. But again, I think that comes from learning to do the work, because you can have, I guess, melodies that do come to you instinctually, but you have to learn what to do with them, how to shape them, how to make them really work for an audience. But clearly melody is something that interests you.
Oh, for sure. I think that's probably the most important thing for me as a songwriter. Well, lyrics is obviously just as important, but, you know, I think being a singer and understanding, you know, what the audience kind of wants to hear, trying to make it interesting for the listener, especially performing it live. You know, it's so different recording and that kind of stuff. So for sure, that's one huge big part of my career so far when writing, for sure.
And you studied at JMC Academy, I think it was. I read that.
You've done your research.
Some formal education in music and performance. I'm wondering if you found it really useful and got some tools out of doing that, or is there part of that formal education process that can actually train you out of following your instinct? If you know what I mean.
Yeah, I think any training is really important when it comes to any kind of career, doesn't it? You know, because you're constantly learning. I'm still learning now. And I think for me, I was quite young. I went straight to JMC after finishing high school, and I did a diploma in contemporary music and performance, and it definitely opened my eyes to the industry, because JMC Academy is more of an industry-based university, so you get to interact with a lot of people behind the scenes. It's not just about the books; it's about the practical side of things and learning how to perform properly, and, you know, work with an audience, and you know, connect with the right people. So that was really important for me, going to do that. But the life experience that I've kind of picked up over the years is probably even more important, to be honest, because when you're out on the road writing, you know, meeting people, meeting all these interesting characters, and going to all these small towns, getting to kind of, you know, perform for the local people, that's where I think you learn from other people doing that.
So you mentioned being out on the road. Of course, that's been disrupted for the past couple of years. But if you're in Queensland, then maybe, you know, not as much as it has been in some other states. But I guess it's also about the energetic return for you as an artist, as a performer. Yeah. Is that if you're not with the audience on a regular basis, you're not getting that energy back. And I know that there is a bit of fuel that can come from that for songwriting and for recording. So have you been missing that over the past couple of years?
Oh, for sure. It's been such a struggle for a lot of us in the music industry. I think the artists, and I guess it's not just about the artists, it's about everyone, you know, the behind the scenes, the producers, the managers, everyone's been struggling. But it's been hard to try and find an outlet. There's only so much performing to a camera at home you can do, or it can stimulate your thirst for it all. But the first wave of lockdowns for me was actually quite interesting, because I put my head down and I worked really hard, and I wrote, and I really honed in on what I wanted to do. So that was really important. And this last lockdown, because I'm actually from Sydney, and I'm on the Gold Coast at the moment, so we were heavily locked down for 3 months in Sydney. And that gave me the opportunity to work remotely on this album. So I really used the time to its advantage as much as I could, because I didn't want to sit around and watch television and waste the time, because I knew that would just not be the right thing to do. So, but performing live, is where it's at for me. I'm still doing some live work. I was just in Tamworth last week. I had a couple of gigs, even though the festival was cancelled. I still had a few gigs, which was great. But and I do a lot of solo work in Sydney still, and that's been going pretty strong, thank goodness. But this year I've got so much booked. I've got I'll be traveling everywhere. I don't know how I'm going to do it all, but I'm looking forward to it. Hopefully it all stays, everything stays open. Fingers crossed, eh?
Well, look, apparently the wave has peaked. I don't know if we can believe these things.
That's what I'm saying, yeah.
So I know the album's coming later in the year. Is it recorded already?
Yeah, it's all ready to go, and it's weird because it's just sitting there now, and I know how good it is. And like I said, I hate tooting my own horn, so I'm excited about the first single. I've got 3 singles dropping before the album comes, and which is really, I just wanted to give them a taste. It's a double disc album as well, so there's a few songs on there. I think there's about 14. Wow. Yeah, and it's it's my first. I've got a distributing deal with this album, so my first kind of taste to be in all retailers. It'll be in all JB Hi-Fi stores and Sanity Music stores. So it's kind of taking that next step away from being an independent artist to dangling your feet in the water with the sharks, the big boys. But I'm really excited about it, and I think for me, I wanted this album to be just really authentic, like I said before. But if I looked at it like, if I never do anything else, which I hopefully will, because I've got so much more in me, but if this is the last thing that I ever make, I wanted it to be just amazing. So that's where I looked at it. And I've got some great songs on there. Like Alan Caswell's on 2 of those songs. I've got a lady called Kath Stewart, who's a beautiful author, and she gifted me some lyrics of hers, which won an award for lyric only a couple of years ago at the Tamworth Country Music Festival TSA Awards. And she gifted me these lyrics for one of the songs, and it's my first kind of dip in the bush ballad. It's actually a bush ballad, but I've made it into a more of a contemporary bush ballad, which is really exciting. So yeah, I'm really excited about the project.
Well, and logistically, I'm glad for you that you finished recording, because if you have all these gigs booked, it would be very hard to get into a studio.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. And I love being in the studio, but it made sense to do the album at that time. And I worked with Rod Motby. I'm not sure if you're familiar with him, but he's a session musician in New South Wales. He plays for a lot of the big artists like Amber Lawrence and, Lee Kernaghan. You don't get much bigger than those guys in the country music scene here. So yeah, he's a fantastic musician and a really great producer. I've worked with him in the past, and I knew that he'd add more of a Nashville kind of sound to what I'm doing, and a 90s vibe. I really wanted a 90s vibe in there, because having said, those other influences, I was heavily influenced by a lot of 90s music as well. So that sound pops its head in there too. So 1993 is a bit of a kind of a dangle of the carrot, to be honest.
Yeah, right. You're setting the scene with 1990. Yeah.
It is, it is, yeah. And
sorry, go on.
It's just, and I thought it'd be an interesting title to just have, 1993 as a song title. I thought that'd be really cool.
Yeah, well, it's intriguing. It's immediately intriguing. So you think, what is going on there? Now, you did mention a little while ago that you, as in our conversation, that you've worked with Lynn Botel, and I know you wrote a song with Lynn Botel, who's just a phenomenal artist. So you've worked with Shane as a producer, you've written with Alan, you've written with Lynn. Are there any other artists on your wish list to write with?
Yeah, there is. I'd love to work with Casey Chambers. I think who wouldn't?
Yeah.
I think, I just think she's such an iconic part of Australian country music, and she was, without her, the crossover sound in Australia probably would never have happened. And it gives us, us indie or us alternative country sound some hope. So I'd love to definitely write with Casey for sure. And like I said, if I could get my hands on writing something with Dolly Parton, if that ever comes to fruition, I think I'd be a very, very happy man if that ever happens. Because, yeah.
Well, you put it out there. So
You know what? If you put your mind to something, anything can happen. That's for sure.
Well, it's very, very true. But Andy, I think I'm going to be talking to you again once the album's coming out. So I'm going to leave album-related questions now. In fact, leave all other questions because I've had you talking for a good long time. Thank you very much for talking to me about 1993, and have fun on the road.
Thanks so much for having me. Yeah, I'm looking forward to. I'll be in Tamworth in April, and the single's out this week. So we'll see you guys soon on the road. That's for sure.
Yeah, fantastic. So people can check your website for your dates.
All the dates on the website or social media. So it's andypenkow.com. Give me a follow, say good day. I love it when I get the feedback. I try and answer every message I get. It gets challenging at times because it can take a while, but I'll get back to you at some stage for sure.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much for your time.
Thanks for having me.